Hi guys, this is Mina from Excel Boosts. In today's tutorial, we're going to cover pivot tables. I'm going to try cover it in under 10 minutes, and after 10 minutes, you'll hopefully have a good grounding skill of how to use a pivot table and how to set one up from scratch using a dataset which has 5,000 rows. So a pivot table is a very powerful and useful feature of Excel. It's an interactive view of your data where you can group your data into different categories, sort it by values, etc. You can also use it to build charts, and you can basically group your data in a meaningful way. Now let's get started on our Excel file. So this is the data I've prepared. It's a dummy set data for 5,000 employees. So we could see their ID in column A, their first name, their last name, their gender, country, age, start date they started employment, and their current salary they're on. So I've actually got 5,000 employees in this data set. So first things first is we're going to put our mouse on cell A1 and we're going to try highlight the whole data set, because if you miss any data from this current highlighting process, the pivot table won't include it. So I'm just going to press Control Shift and keep selecting the two keys, and I'm going to select right, and then I'm going to keep my fingers on Control Shift and press down. So I've now highlighted the whole data set without missing any rows, which is a very important step, or you're going to get wrong data later on. So I'm going to go to the Insert tab and I'm going to select Pivot Table. So this selection criteria here, it shows the data you've just selected with our Control Shift method. So it tells me I've selected data from A1 all the way to H row 5001. So I've selected all my data, which is correct. I'm not going to alter that. The second section here shows me where I want to place the pivot table. So do I want to place it in the current worksheet, or would I like to place it in a new worksheet? So for an easier view for myself, my preference is to put it in a new worksheet. So I'm going to keep it on that selection criteria, and I'm going to press OK. So the new worksheet, the new tab has now been created. I'm going to rename this. So right click and select rename and type pivot table. Press enter. And now you've renamed your second tab as pivot table, and we've got our data tab there. So for now, we don't need to refer back to this data tab, as we've ensured that we highlighted the whole data. So all the data is now actually accessible from this pivot table here. So if I select any cell outside the pivot table, the field list area disappears. But if I want to navigate back to that field list, I put my mouse on the pivot table area here, and the field list opens up. So the field list is an area where you manage your pivot table, and that's how you interact with your data using this interactive tool here. So just to go over the layout of the pivot table field area. So the first box here, it shows your data, the column names of your data. So as we've seen before in the data tab, we had our ID, first name, last name, gender, country, age, start date, and their salary. So these are all column names which the pivot table will use. And we've also got our filter criteria here. So if I put gender, for example, if I drop that to the filter criteria, I can then filter based on female or male and then press OK. And then the data will show me just that criteria for females. It will exclude any males from the data. So that is the filter criteria. If the row criteria is, similar thing where I can, for example, select country, drag that down to rows. Any column name you select from here and you put in rows, it will appear on the row side of your pivot table. So for example, you can see France, Great Britain, United States. We've got females living in all of these 3 different countries. And now the value section of my pivot table is the values you want to appear alongside the row names. So if I want to see how many employees live in each country, I can then select ID, for example, and I can put it in values. So I don't want it to sum the ID, because that's an incorrect view of the data. So we don't have you know, this amount of employees. We only had 5,000, but this actually just sums all the IDs here. So if I sum from row 2 all the way to row 5001, I've got the same sum. Well, that's actually for females, but if I, unfilter this to all females and males, I am getting 23.6 million of sum of IDs, which is correct, which is 23.6, but I just want the count of people. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my pivot table and change sum of ID to, I'm going to select value field settings and change that to count. So as you can see, we've got many other ways you can categorize your data. So you can have an average, a max, a min, which shows, the maximum amount, minimum amount, account numbers, and everything else, which we'll go through in later tutorials as it's a bit more advanced. So I'm going to go and count, which will show me the individual count per ID. And now we've got 5,000 employees. So what the count does is, for these 5 rows, it actually just gives me a count of 5. So it's 1 per employee. And you can actually select any column here, which is all populated in this data set, to give you the count of people, because any data will give you a count of 1 if you change the count, if you change it to count type. So if I remove ID and, for example, just put last name, if I put that in there, I'm still getting 5,000. If I am putting that back and taking their age, I'm still getting, if I change it from sum to count, it should still be 5,000 as long as the data is populated in your data tab. But ID is usually, it's an automated generic column of any data set. So it's just more accurate to use that because it's less likely to have missing data. So you're getting an accurate view. So just change that to count. So we've got 5,000 employees in total, and they live in France, Great Britain, United States. So I could also, just filter on just the US people. So I'm just going to click this drop down box here and select United States. Because it's already in my row area, I could have filtered it there. But if I want to put it in the filter area, I could also do that. So select country and put it in filter and select United States. Now you're getting your 2,400 people that live in the United States. So if I want to have the sum of all salary of people that live in the US, I'm just going to get the salary column here and put it in values. So now it's giving me a sum of salary, which is correct. So the sum of salary of all the people that live in the United States is 158 million people. So if I want to split this up further by gender, so again, a pivot table, it just depends how you want to view the data. If I want to view this by gender, for example, from a specific query, I'll then get gender and put it in rows. So now I can see 1,700 people that live in the US are female, 700 are male, and their specific salaries are on this side. If I then want to, for example, just select France and the United States, I'm going to tick France and the United States, press OK, and then our head count increases to 3,600 people because it's a combination of both these countries. If I then want to see the split of the France and the United States, I'll then take country and put it in rows. So any data you actually want to see in this section as informative data, you're going to put in rows, and the values, for example, if it's a count or a sum or an average, you're always going to drag that column into values. So usually that is a numeric value, a numeric column which has, numbers. And now we can see the split of female by country, the split of male by country from only France and the United States. If I now want to include all countries, I'll just select all, press OK, and you've got your 5,000 employees again. So if I want to actually change the order of this, so have the country first, then have the gender split, I'll just go to my pivot table field here and just switch the order of that. So I'm wanting country first, and then I want gender. So now I've got, France, and then the split of gender and the rest of the countries. If I want to have France beside female and male, you can actually go to the design tab, which is a very useful tab. So I'll go into report layout, show in tabular form first, and then go back to report layout and repeat all item labels. So I want France to show beside every single row. Imagine if my report had that format, it would be easier for me. And if I don't want the subtotal of France, Great Britain, and the United States, I'll then just right-click and unclick subtotal country. So you've got your summative view and your numbers are still the same. So again, you can put anything in the filter criteria. If I can put first name, last name, their age, and then you can filter as you go along. So if I want to see, if I put start date too. So if I want to see all employees that started employment in August, I'll select August and press OK. And I've got 1,700 people that started employment in August, and these are their details. If you then want their names included, you will select the first name and put it in. And same thing with the last name if you needed that information too. And again, if you want to unclick subtotal, gender, and subtotal the first name, you then get a summative view with the same numbers. So it just depends how you want to view your data. So, with these headings here, you can actually, further adjust your pivot table. So if you want to change the color of it, the format of it. So for example, if I wanted an orange layout, because my specific report was more of an orange theme, I would put that. And again, you can change, all these style options. So if I wanted banded columns, the columns show there, banded rows, and these are, as I showed you before, if you want to repeat item labels or how you want to view your data, you can play around with that and get a feel of what you're really after. And if you want to include all subtotals, you select that. If you want to exclude it, do not show subtotals. So just play around with that header, the design header, and you'll understand it more by time. And we'll go through all of these slicers and the source of the data and other functionalities of the pivot table, hopefully in another tutorial. So that is it for today, guys. Thank you very much, and like and subscribe if you like this video. Thank you very much. Bye.